Welcome. Thank you for joining us again on another episode of Bioenergetic Beats. I'm Heather Gray, your host. I'm a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and certified bioenergetic practitioner. And this episode is brought to you today by Nikki, Unleash the Wellness Within. It's a non-invasive, easily affordable, and highly effective approach to optimize wellness. It's a wearable device that puts frequency-based better life in your hands and on your wrist. And today we got super special guest, Miss Dr. Catherine Clinton. Let's give her a warm welcome, a nice round of applause. Thank you for joining us today. And she's going to dive into quantum biology explained, which if you know anything about Nikki and the frequency-based, and we're talking about light and energies and frequencies, like this is, I've been following you for so long and we speak the same dorky, energy, frequency, language. And so you just seem like an amazing guest to have on here. So thank you for saying yes. And thank you for coming on today.
Oh, I am honored. Thank you so much for having me. And you're right. I am a total dork about all this stuff. I love researching it. Someone the other day said, like, how come you're not always like scrolling on social media or, playing games on your phone? It's like, because I'm researching.
Learning.
That's what I do. So,
oh my gosh, right?
So it is an honor to be here, and I'm really excited to just dive into it.
Let's do it. So tell us a little bit about your background. Most folks I know who are in like the alternative space wellness, the quantum field, it's usually because of their own story that got them there. So let's hear a little bit about what got you here.
Yeah, and I'm no different. I was in my second year of naturopathic medical school, and it was sort of that initiation year, really long clinic hours. You got to be here at 7. If you're not here at 7 to sign the attendance, then you flunk out of the class and have to start over next year, sort of where you weed out people, right? And it was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. I was diagnosed with Lyme disease. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto thyroiditis. I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. Those are autoimmune conditions that affect the thyroid gland and the GI tract and colon, and multiple GI infections. It was just sort of like a domino effect. And I was in the perfect place to get sick. I was at a naturopathic medical school, so I had all of that at my hands, hydrotherapy and nutritional supplements and lifestyle changes. I was working up at OHSU, which is allopathic medical school. And so I had those tools at my hands. I was across the river from an acupuncture school. So I really had all the best tools. And it was a long journey, but I was able to kind of put the pieces back together physically so that I could go back to school. I could still see patients in the clinic. But for anyone who's had a chronic diagnosis, they know that just getting back to that layer of or level of productivity isn't really the end all be all of healing, right? And so I was working with an incredible mentor, Dr. Satya Ambros, and she was really pushing me to look at how our emotions impact our biology. And the big fancy name for that is psychoneuroimmunology. And I was very resistant because I would rather have a supplement.
But isn't that true? Like when I was going through the FDN program, like functional diagnostic nutrition, I was like, do this diet, take this supplement, no problem. And then people are like, no, you got to focus on the emotions. I was like, no, we're not going there. No.
Exactly. And so she kept kind of connecting the dots, and I was like, okay. And so looking at that, I was at the same time researching mitochondrial health, which we now know is really kind of at every level of disease or health. And the two of them, looking at how our thoughts impact mitochondrial function, just kind of blew the doors wide open on quantum biology. And quantum biology really is just the study of quantum phenomenon that we used to think was isolated to a lab, like electron tunneling or coherence, or the ability of a quantum particle like a photon of light to take multiple paths. And so quantum biology is the study of those phenomenon in living systems. And it includes circadian medicine, light therapies, sound therapies, frequency medicine, emotional frequencies, and how that impacts our biology. And Heather, it's so incredible because our medicine right now is so reductive. And if we think we're at the height of medicine right now, that's a really frightening thought, right? Because we're in multiple epidemics. And the beautiful thing about quantum biology is once you start looking at the flow of electrons, the flow of protons, how photons of light interact with our biology, you start to see a picture of interconnection that spans not only within our body, but to the people in our lives, to the plants in our lives, to the earth, and really to the universe, right? If we think about that cosmic radiation hitting our ionosphere and creating a flow of electrons that travels from plants to animals to every person on the planet, we start to see a beautiful picture of interconnection. And so I've never really left the quantum biology room because it is so fascinating, and it opens up a picture of medicine that includes everything on earth. And I think that's really where we need to be headed with medicine, instead of this boxed out medicine of, this is this therapy and this is that organ and this is this cell. It really connects everything into a beautiful fabric of life. And I'm absolutely loving the research that's coming out around it.
I can totally tell because you are so like lit up right now. It is absolutely gorgeous. I loved what you talked about. And it's funny because, Lyme patients, especially, right? We have to really think outside of the box to get better. And I remember I was a hairstylist when I learned about Rife technology, right? And like that quantum, that Rife technology, the frequency stuff, like I really struggled explaining how it works to people, but intuitively, it was the only thing that like ever spoke to my soul. And so I've been bouncing around and playing with these different technologies for over a decade now, but still, even as a certified practitioner, I still don't quite have the vocab sometimes to explain it eloquently because it's just something that I get in my cells, right? Like,
Yeah.
what do you how do you explain this? Let's like dumb it down for the folks, like the non-believers and the stuff out there that kind of thinks that a lot of this stuff is woo-woo, right? When it is really foundationally into physics.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've always known that, right? When quantum physics came to be around the turn of the century in the 1900s, it was a fundamental truth. And it is arguably the most validated theory of physics and science out there, meaning that people have not been able to prove it wrong. And so we've always known that, in a sense, and we've learned in school, like, okay, a chair is a solid chair, but in between the atoms there's all this space. And so it's been this part of our culture, but we've really kind of kept it at arm's length from living systems, right? And so when we're talking about quantum biology, really what we're talking about is the smallest pieces of our biology interacting with the smallest pieces of our world, a photon of light, a phonon of sound, the vibration of heat, of emotions, of all of these different things, and how they start the gears that give rise to what we see as an enzymatic reaction or a hormonal cascade. Really, the starting point is with that interaction in the smallest pieces. It's really this beautiful unfolding of this invisible blueprint or this invisible order in the world that we can't perceive with our eyes. But finally, technology is at a point where we can start gaining evidence that this is actually what's happening. Actually, we are just giving birth to what we see with our eyes, what we see under a microscope with these quantum interactions. It's a really beautiful emerging field, and it is emerging. We have dedicated quantum biology departments at places like UC Berkeley. We've got researchers at MIT and Harvard. We have really come a long way in the quantum biology field from the start, which was the early 2000s with Fleming and Engel, and they were looking at photosynthetic bacteria and how does a photon of light get to a photosynthetic reaction center to create photosynthesis, right? The basis of life on this earth. How does that happen with near 100% efficiency? If you're looking at it, you see this photosynthetic bacteria is crowded. The chances for the classical physics explanation where, well, the photon goes in and it just kind of bounces around until it hits the photosynthetic reaction center and then magic happens. And it's like, actually, there's no way that that can happen. We know that every single cell in our body is completing over 100,000 tasks per second. And this isn't fringe science. This is well accepted everywhere, but it is impossible with the explanations that are in classical physics. And quantum biology offers an explanation and an answer for why those things are possible.
That's absolutely incredible. And I'm so curious to dive deeper because, like I said, I knew this conversation was just going to be absolutely fascinating. We're going to take a real quick break right now. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
There's a new word for wellness, Nikki. Nikki, the bioenergetic wearable designed to help you feel better and perform better. Other wearables just track how you're doing. Nikki is about helping you do better. Nikki takes bioenergetic frequency science to a new level and onto your wrist. Nikki technology carries frequencies into the body to organize and optimize cellular network, the trillions of cells that communicate by light and frequencies to keep us alive and feeling our best. Physical and mental trauma can upset cellular communication, and Nikki is designed to help restore it. Touch the Nikki screen to choose the frequency you want for what you want to do and how you want to feel. Low energy? Touch energy for a boost. Stressed out? Stress and anxiety is to calm you down. Aches and pains? Choose Nikki Pain. Nikki has frequency sets intended to fight allergies, strengthen immunity, and keep viruses and bacteria at bay. If you're going on a trip and want to arrive fresh and ready to enjoy your vacation, touch travel. And if you want to wake up ready to go, Nikki Nighttime is for overcoming daytime trauma while you sleep. Every Nikki comes loaded with a full inventory of frequency set, including pain, energy, travel, immune, stress and anxiety, viruses and bacteria, allergies, insomnia, daytime bundles, nighttime bundles. Nikki puts a personal wellness center in your hands and on your wrist. Be better. Do better. We are Nikki.com.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us again, everybody. If you missed the first half, you missed a lot. Go back and listen. You don't, because it's just incredible. Mind-blowing information. I love this conversation of the quantum, of frequencies, of healing, of the connection of our emotions and how they affect our body. I remember it was so profound. I heard Louise Hayes, right, speak one time, and she's like, if you don't think your thoughts have anything to do with your body, she's like, think of something that turns you on. And think about the physical, right? The physical reaction that you get from thinking of turned on thoughts. I was like, that was like the most like concrete example I think anyone's ever given me of the correlation of how our thoughts affect our biological body, right? Like it was so brilliant and so simple.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can just go down the list of every emotion, right? Think of how anger increases your blood pressure, how a loving hug gives you that sense of safety and decreases your heart rate and your blood pressure. I mean, it's
Increases oxytocin.
yeah, absolutely. And we're no stranger to this. We're no stranger to walking in a room and being like, wow, I want to sit here and talk with this person for a long time, or I'm in the wrong room. I have to, I have to get out of here. So it's something we've always intuitively known, but the wonderful thing about quantum physics and quantum biology is that now we're having research that is validating this. And the wonderful thing about quantum biology, one of the wonderful things, in my opinion, is that it brings us full circle with what some of the ancient indigenous cultures always spoke about, always had ways of diagnosing and treating and looking at the body through a quantum phase, or excuse me, through a quantum lens or a quantum perspective, right? The idea of energy flows and meridians, the idea of meridians has been something that's not just isolated to Chinese medicine. It's in Egyptian medicine, it's in Ayurvedic medicine, it is in South American and American medicine. It's really an African medicine. You have these ancient indigenous cultures talking about these things. There was always this intuitive knowing. And because of basically the scientific revolution, we have to see it under a microscope. And now it has to go through a peer review publication or journal for us to believe that it's a real thing. And that's where we're at now. Quantum biology and the technology has arisen in the last couple decades allows us to bring that validation to some of those very intuitive experiences that we've all had.
That's funny because that's what I was explaining at the beginning of the show, right? That I don't explain this work very well, but intuitively, the hairstylist in me at the time, got it. Right. I was taking the Western medicine model for a while and I thought they were going to kill me because they never asked if I was pooping daily. They never asked what my stress level was like. They never asked what my diet was like. They just threw napalm at this critter that's been in my body for 3 decades. Sorry, a little over 2 decades. But, so like I said, I started looking for alternative things and then, frequencies, energy, and I got so much crap from my family, but that's how I ended up getting better. And then now, being involved with Free Medica and Nikki, and man, this little silly device with the red light and the frequencies, it's so simplistic yet powerful. It's ridiculous. And you gave me goosebumps when you talked about bringing the indigenous, right, art form, because that's what it is. We're getting back to the basics.
Yeah.
In a beautiful way, because we got away from this stuff when, the Industrial Revolution hit, and we've got, Rockefellers and stuff like that who were, promoting vaccines and prescriptions over the, apothecaries. And we got off track as humans. We got off track.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's not that looking under a microscope and seeing things isn't a valid thing. Of course it is. But the idea that it stops there has limited us so much in medicine. And now I think that, really what I take away from quantum biology is that this unseen order, these things we can't see, the invisible blueprint of the world is really what's giving rise to the things that we can see. And it's just such a beautiful field of study because it also includes that intuitive knowing, that experience, right? Our experiences are now valid again. We can say that this has a real impact on our health, and we can show through studies, through, imaging of quantum tunneling in a protein or the quantum spin in a neuron. All of these things are bringing validation back to our own personal experience. And I think both of us have experienced at a doctor's office that a personal experience has no place in mainstream medicine. It's completely put aside. And that's one of the most detrimental things we can be doing doing to ourselves, to our patients, really discarding their own intuition and their own experience of what's happening.
Oh, 110%. When I worked in the cannabis industry for a short period of time, that was a huge one, right? There was mostly anecdotal because we weren't allowed to research it because it was illegal and it was fringe for so long, but it was literally curing cancer and changing people's lives. But you couldn't say, because it was just anecdotal. Like this whole kind of very masculine way of science, right? It's done us a massive disservice. And I love the fact that the pendulum is starting to swing in the other direction, and we're getting more in touch with our feminine, our intuitiveness, our right, like the anecdotal side of it. And at some point they'll come back together and they'll merge, and it'll be a beautiful thing. But right now, the pendulum swung in way too far one direction, and now it needs to come back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the privileges I have as a naturopathic physician, is that so much of what we do and have done for centuries is anecdotal, right? So I feel great about prescribing earthing or prescribing circadian medicine or prescribing things that people would say, well, we need more evidence. And it's like, well, there's actually tons and tons of evidence out there, but it's still categorized as anecdotal at times, right? And really what's happening is, in research and in medicine, you have this dichotomy between the powers that be and the funding that happens. So you can't get funding from NIH and other agencies unless your research is going towards a new drug, going towards a new medical device. And as a business model, that makes a lot of sense. But as a healthcare model, it's left huge, enormous gaps in our healthcare system. And it's really nice to see that the pendulum is starting to come back.
Speaking of pendulum, that's another woo-woo thing. But dig a little deeper. So how do you use quantum biology like in your own practice?
When I'm talking with patients about their health, one of the things that I like to get across right away is that we are electrical beings, right? And we can just look at how neurons function, right? We learned in our middle school biology that it is an electrical charge that goes down the axon and goes into that neural space and charges another neuron, and that's how they're communicating. That's how we get action. And so it's not so foreign to people, right? So that idea of being an electrical being has always been with us in science and anatomy and medicine. And this is something that we use in measuring our brain function, EEG, or our heart function, and EKG. So this is something that's used in mainstream medicine every second of every day. And when we're looking at how this impacts our health, we really have to be mindful that we have an electrical charge. Our body has an electrical charge. Our organs have an electrical charge. Our tissues, our cells all have an electrical charge. And maintaining that charge is vital for health. And we see a decrease in that charge when disease starts to arise. And one of the main, I sort of have 3 pillars that are just the foundation of my practice, both personally and with my family, but also with my patients. And those are maintaining our electrical charge through contact with the earth, with earthing, with grounding. I say often that the earth is the socket and we're the plug. A lot of studies out there on earthing were done 45 minutes, 2 hours, overnight. And that's wonderful. It's great to have scientific validation, but we also know that that flow of electrons that is coming from the sea of electrons that is lining our earth, right? Our earth has a negative electrical charge. And so the minute we contact that with our body, we are able to absorb those electrons and distribute them where they need to be to maintain our own negative charge within the body. And so that is like one of the foundational things that I try to get across to, again, my patients and my family and friends, because I'm always talking about this, but maintaining our electrical charge by coming in contact with the earth. We can do that with our bare feet. We can do that with our hands. We can sit on a rock that's embedded on the earth. We can sit with clothing that's conductive, like silk or cotton, linen. These actually don't act as a barrier, where like a polyester would impede that conduction of those electrons, right?